Okay, Tuesday morning, December 2nd. So last week we saw the dismissal of the prosecution cases against James Comey and Leticia James. Those both had been brought by U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindseay Halligan. Each of those defendants filed motions to dismiss based on multiple grounds. One of the grounds on which they filed their motions was that Lindseay Halligan had been unlawfully appointed to serve in that position and was unlawfully serving as a U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. That was the grounds upon which the judge in the case ruled, determining that she had been illegally appointed, and that resulted in those cases getting dismissed. Remember, there's been a development here as it relates to James Comey. Trump DOJ is trying to get a new grand jury to indict James Comey again, despite the fact that the statute of limitations has expired. And remember that it was expiring, I don't even remember when, like August 30th or September 1st or September 5th, something like that. It was a 5-year statute of limitations. The prior U.S. attorney who had been properly appointed to that position, his name was Eric something, he did a declination memo, meaning declining to bring charges because there was not enough evidence to sustain an indictment or a conviction against James Comey. Lindseay Halligan was brought in at the last minute to get that indictment, which she got just a couple of days before that statute of limitations expired. And then that's been dismissed. The statute of limitations has lapsed. So theoretically, the DOJ is barred from ever bringing those charges against James Comey ever again. There is a federal statute, and this is what the next steps of the legal arguments are going to be about. There is a statute in place that would seemingly give the DOJ a 6-month window to re-bring that indictment, even though the statute of limitations has lapsed. I know this is murky. I don't think we have a U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia right now, because the judge ruled that Lindseay Halligan's appointment to that position was unlawful. But then Pam Bondi appointed her as a special prosecutor for the James Comey case. That's murky at best. There's nothing definitive about whether Lindseay Halligan has actually been appointed in such a manner, if it's legal for Pam Bondi to do so. The whole thing is a mess. And again, like I said in a video that I put up earlier this morning, all of this goes back to their complete rank incompetence throughout the Trump administration. And this is what happens when you appoint people because of their loyalty as opposed to appointing people for their competence. Donald Trump is appointing people because they are loyal to him, and they're all turning out to be extremely incompetent. So I'm reading an article from Mediaite. And Lindseay Halligan made several mistakes. She never showed the final indictment to the full grand jury. They never voted on the final document. She told the grand jurors that Jim Comey would be compelled to testify at trial. No defendant under the Fifth Amendment can be compelled to testify against himself. And she also did a trust me bro with the grand jury and told them that the government actually had much better evidence than what she was presenting to the grand jury, and the government will be presenting that much better evidence at trial, even though she didn't show it to the grand jury. So she's just a boob all over the place. It's so, and also remember that, so Lindseay Halligan was appointed to be the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. No other attorney in that office, no other assistant U.S. attorney would agree to participate in any of this stuff as it relates to James Comey or Leticia James, because there was insufficient evidence to sustain an indictment or a conviction. That much is clear. And because these both appeared to be blatantly obvious political prosecutions. And so they had to find another assistant U.S. attorney, one from Missouri and one from North Carolina, to go in and argue these motions to the judge, these motions to dismiss. And the judge actually put Lindseay Halligan on the witness stand and was also questioning these two assistant U.S. attorneys from Missouri and North Carolina. The one from North Carolina, I think, the judge was like, well, was there a declination memo or not? And then that assistant U.S. attorney looked at the judge and said, Todd Blanch, the Deputy Attorney General for the United States, instructed me to not answer that question. You're not allowed to do that. That's one step below just lying to the court. But so there's going to be a dispute over this statute of limitations issue and this other federal statute that may or may not come into play. MSNBC reporter Ken Delanian was on earlier this morning with Ana Cabrera, and she asked him, she's like, what about the statute of limitations? Isn't that an issue for the Comey case? Yes, it is. The statute of limitations has lapsed. And Ken Delanian said, it is, but that is in dispute. James Comey's lawyers definitely insist that this case cannot be re-indicted because they say the original indictment was null and void. It never really was properly presented because of grand jury misconduct, and that will have to be litigated. The judge left open the door, the judge who ruled last week that this case could be re-indicted again, because it was dismissed without prejudice, meaning theoretically that prosecutors could bring the case again. The opposite of that would be if it were dismissed with prejudice, meaning prosecutors can never bring that case ever again. But again, that's a matter of dispute. It'll have to be litigated on. But again, each of these two defendants, James Comey and Leticia James, had multiple grounds on which they filed motions to dismiss. And, including one main one that the judge did not rule on, selective, vindictive prosecution, meaning that Donald Trump is personalizing and weaponizing the Justice Department to specifically go after his perceived enemies or people who have gone after him in the past, like Leticia James and James Comey both did, and that he is just prosecuting them in a campaign of retribution. I would note that attached to James Comey's motion to dismiss for selective and vindictive prosecution, he attached a spreadsheet. I think it was like 60 pages long. And it was just one after the other, after the other, after the other of times, either in interviews or giving speeches or in social media posts when Donald Trump had said mean things about James Comey. And it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of that. So even if prosecutors at the DOJ get past the statute of limitations issue with James Comey, they're still going to have to deal with that motion to dismiss for selective and vindictive prosecution. And it was a very, very well put together motion with lots and lots and lots of supporting evidence. So we'll see how this one develops.